Hi guys, today's lesson is on the perfect tense, which is obviously a French tense, and it's also called le passé composé. So the objective for today's lesson is to understand how to use the perfect tense in French, and we'll be looking at specifically three things. So we'll be looking at what it is and when to use it, how to use it for the majority of verbs, and then we look specifically at the ones we called motion verbs, as it works a bit differently. So let's start with understanding what the perfect tense is. So it is one of the French past tenses. It's the one you would use to say, for example, what you did yesterday or last week. So if you were to say last week I played football, yesterday I went home, or even 2 years ago I watched a movie with my parents. But if you're trying to talk about something that you used to do, then it will be different. So if you were to say, last year I used to travel to go to work, or when I was little I would arrive at 10 o'clock on Sundays, then this will not be the perfect tense anymore. So let's avoid confusion and keep things simple here. Only the top ones: I played, I went, I watched, and equivalent. So the way it works is not so difficult, but there's a few things to remember. So first thing is to know that it's made of three parts. So the first part is the subject, so who does the action. If you're learning the perfect tense, that means you've already done the present, so you should know how to say I, you, he, she, and so on. Part number two is what we call an auxiliary, and in the specific case of those verbs here, we'll be using avoir, so to have. And part number three is the past participle, which will be the actual verb, the doing word, the action, and we'll see how we change it. So we want to start with part number two. So je is followed by ai, which means j'ai, I have, you have, tu as, il or elle a, on a, nous avons, vous avez, ils and elles ont. Part number three, as you can see, there's three options here. You must remember that the verbs can end in er, in ir, or in re. That's what you find in the dictionary. If your verbs end in er, it's quite simply, we replace the er with an e with an accent. If it ends with ir, it becomes I, and re changes to you. As always, there's a few exceptions, so I've put the main ones here. There's others, but those are the most common ones that you may need. So to be is j'ai été, so that's how it spells. You see, it's not following the rules, because the re would become you, but not in this case, and it's the same for the other ones. So with to have, we have j'ai eu, to do, j'ai fait, so I did, I drank because became j'ai bu, I saw becomes j'ai vu, and I took becomes j'ai pris. Now I've mentioned before that there's two different ways. So we've seen before now how to do for most verbs, but there are specific words which we call motion verbs. So what are those motion verbs? As you can see there on the photo, there's a list of verbs which all have to do with movement, pretty much. So we're talking about partir, to leave, arriver, to arrive, venir, to come, rentrer or entrer, to enter, to come in, monter, to go up, and so on. So all these verbs are on a specific list here and will not follow the pattern we've seen before. You may have heard about Dr. and Mrs. Van der Trump if you look at the initials on the side. That's also another way to remember what those verbs are, and the ones you will have heard in class with me is about Mr. the Dream Pants, and it's our SpongeBob list. Okay, so like I've said, all those verbs are following a different pattern. They're still made of three parts: the subject, the auxiliary, but it's now changing to être, it's not avoir anymore, and we still have the past participle for the er, ir, and re verbs. So because we have être, to be, we now have I am, je suis, tu es, so you are, and so on. So il and elle est, on est, nous sommes, vous êtes, ils and elles sont. For part number three, again three options. The er becomes e with an accent, ir becomes I, re becomes you, no difference here, but you can notice that sometimes there's an extra e or an extra s. When we talk about specifically the motion verbs, the ones on the list we've seen before, we need to add the extra E if it's feminine. So when we talk about elle, it's obviously feminine, we need the extra E. Je, for example, could be feminine if the person talking, doing the action, is a woman or a girl. And we can also see that there is an extra S, which needs to be added for when it is plural. So that's the tricky thing there. The way I always teach it to remember is quite simply, SpongeBob is really annoying. So if it is on the SpongeBob list, or if it is one from the house that we've had to memorize, they're annoying, so we need to remember it's further annoying with the feminine, and the S we need to add the E and the S. Now, just like for the first one with avoir, there are also some exceptions here with the être ones, with the motion verb. So to come, as you can see in French, is venir, so it ends in ir, so theoretically it should become I, but in this case it's a U. And then the same devenir becomes je suis devenu, to die, so I died, je suis mort, to be born, so I was born, je suis né. And now to finish, we will be looking at a step-by-step example using she arrived, using arriver, and she finished, using finir, on how to really build the perfect tense. So we've got a clear step-by-step approach here to follow. So the first thing is to wonder how to translate the pronoun. So here we've got she, so it's quite simple, we know elle. Step number 2, we need to check if the verbs we are using, what we are trying to say, is on the SpongeBob list, or on Mrs. Van der Trump, or in the house picture for motion. So, number 3, once we've got that, we'll follow the different steps here. So the first one, arrived, is on the list. So we need to have part number 2 made of être. So elle is followed by a. And now let's go to part number 3 and see what's happening there. The ER from arrivé changes and becomes E accent. And because it is one from the SpongeBob list, the house on Dr. and Mrs. Van der Trump, then we need to remember it's annoying and we need to look for feminine or plural. Here we had she, so we need to add the extra E, and this is how we say she arrived. Elle est arrivée. Now let's go back to she finished, which was not on any of those lists. So we'll be using avoir as a part number 2, which means that elle is followed by are. Elle a. In the same way we looked at on part number 3, which is ir in the case of finir, so the ir becomes I. And because it's not on any of the list, we just leave it at that, nothing else is needed. Thank you guys for watching. I hope that will help you a wee bit with learning the perfect tense. It's always a tricky one, so don't forget you need to practice again and again. And remember, along the process you will be making mistakes. It's normal, so please don't be shy. Make them and learn from them. That's how you get better with a language.